What's going on, Soul Tribe? I salute the divinity in you, and welcome to my channel, Alchemist. Justin here, and bringing another little nugget to add to the Soul Tribe archive. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about Mercury in Sagittarius in the 12th house, and this is a tricky one for Mercury to be in. Now, when you're working with that Mercury, the nature of Mercury is how we communicate. You know, it's thought, it's reason, it's forethought. It can be even like practical understanding. And I even like to think of like interpretation, you know, because Mercury is so close, always within like 28 degrees of the sun, and it's always translating in how we interpret those divine inspirations, those ideas that we have, how we understand those things, and help other people understand them. So, you know, that's going to be some of the things that and how we learn. You know, that's going to be some of the things that Mercury will cover. And then you talk about Sagittarius. Sag is ruled by Big Papa, Jupiter, and they are the mutable fire sign, and they're active or yang in nature. And I find Sagittarius, especially having that Jupiterian influence, they are the great adventurers. The energy is always moving with Sagittarius, that mutable fire. You know, it's questing after that next big thing in life. What can I experience today? How can I show up today? What are some new things that make me feel alive today? What are some different things? You know, that's the beauty, I think, of Sagittarius. Whether it's actually going on some sort of trip, maybe it's exploring different foods, maybe it's exploring different literature, whatever that's looking like. Sag is always looking to expand, to grow, and anything to keep that fire fueled. I like to think of Sagittarius as like a big bonfire, and it's just kind of bringing people together. So, you know, the great philosophers, I think, is a really great energy with Sag as well there. And then you talk about the 12th house. Now, in ancient, you know, the 12th house in ancient astrology is known as the house of bad spirit. And some of the themes that this house is going to cover will be like, it's going to be any sort of like maybe loss, great illnesses or sickness. This can be enemies, but more so kind of like those hidden enemies, you know, maybe people that might talk about behind you, but more so those kind of inner demons that we wrestle with, that doubt, the self-deprecating language, things along those lines. It also can deal with like, you know, sorrow, sufferings, tribulations, toils. Yeah, I think I mentioned isolation. So those are going to be some of, you know, all those wonderful topics. I have my son there. But when you're working with this placement, a couple of things to consider. One, you'd have a Capricorn rising by whole sign, and you're going to want to look to Big Papa, because Jupiter's going to be responsible for this house and your third house, which is going to be like your siblings, any sort of like learning, short-term travels, communication, things along those lines. And then Mercury's going to be responsible for your ninth house, which is going to be like long distance travels, foreign cultures, spirituality, your beliefs, astrology, divination sort of things kind of fall in that house. And also your sixth house, which deals with like injuries, illness. This can be like workers, subordinates, or work and subordinates, jobs, you know, pets, things along those lines. So a couple of things that I would talk with about this person is, one, when you are in those, because I would imagine maybe in this one, sometimes when you're maybe going through those kind of like 12th house themes in life, or maybe even those kind of 6th house themes, where you're feeling maybe that depression, or maybe you have been dealing with some sort of like long-term illness, whether that be yours or maybe that's something that you dealt with another. It's just like, how do you keep the mental energies moving? Because this is a tricky one for Mercury to be in, not just because it's a 12th house, but this is also the sign where Mercury finds itself in its detriment. And when a planet is in its detriment, it just means it's furthest away from its home sign, which would be in Gemini in this instance, one of its home signs. And it's where it knows how, it's think about it just like where you know how your home space works, you know where everything is, but now you're in a place where everything's different. You know, the fridge is in the bedroom, the bathroom is next to the, you know, it's just like everything is topsy-turvy. And so, you know, where Mercury likes the details in things in Gemini, now we're thinking about these kind of bigger questions in life. You know, there may be those times where you find your beliefs really challenged. You know, how do you keep yourself going on thinking about all of the plights in the world? How do you keep that energy moving? You know, pay attention to the internal dialogue and finding different ways to move through those times, whether it be having different spiritual practices, maybe making that a part of your daily regimen, or even just doing some sort of like learning about different ways of handling, whether it be through meditation, or if you're dealing with some kind of illness, maybe this is up on top of course working with like a doctor or any sort of like healthcare professional, having some sort of like holistic sort of things. I'd like to think of any kind of planet that rules the sixth house. Preventative maintenance is a very important thing, so maybe working with different herbs. St. John's wort, for example, is a great one for depression. It's one where you do want to check, if you did, just as a little sidebar, you do want to check if you are taking any sort of like pharmaceuticals, to check with any sort of like dosing things, if that would be a practical one for you. But working with different herbs, chamomile, ashwagandha, whatever that's looking like, that can be a really great thing to just help you lift your spirits up whenever you happen to be going through those just tough chapters in life, or when other people are going through those tough chapters, because then you can help maybe even provide them a worldview. I think the nice thing, even though Mercury has a little trickiness here, I think that Mercury can have a very inspiring speech. Could say like, hey, I understand what you're going through, and maybe even helping people change their beliefs about their situation, maybe not looking at whatever sort of maybe shortcoming that a person may feel like they have. They could help you. I think this placement can help turn that into an advantage, help shift perspectives in a sense, which is a really powerful, I think, ability to have. And I think with the 12th house, this is just one of those houses where that's where healers, I find, any sort of like health workers seem to come out of this. So maybe you happen to be some sort of like therapist, or maybe some sort of life coach, maybe something maybe in like the clergy, maybe you have some sort of maybe involved with some kind of church and you're helping people through their plights, or whatever that might be looking like. But I would even think too, maybe even when you're having maybe just like a tough, maybe kind of mental time, maybe kind of processing some things, take some trips away. That could be, do some really good for your health. Maybe go remove yourself for every now and again, go on some kind of retreat, go on some kind of vacation where you can be alone, where you can be with your thoughts, and because I think that 12th house too it can kind of take on the energies of others. You want to take on that responsibility, and that can be heavy sometimes. You gotta work through that sometimes when you're, because there are parts and things in life, that can be really heavy. And you do get you asking those kind of bigger questions to, what's the point, and but I just think that this Mercury could do a lot of good, but it may come with just like going through your own kind of challenges, or helping others, maybe those around you, maybe something where thinking how Jupiter rules that third house, maybe you grew up dealing with something where you had to take care of family members or relatives, siblings, things like that. Does your community even support, where you're growing up, your neighborhood, does that support, how does that support your energy? Is it something that is it bringing you down? Maybe you need to explore. Maybe there's been a lot of I don't want to say bad luck, maybe some misfortune, some things that have come up in there, and so maybe you need to think about moving to outside of your place to kind of free up the mind. So those would just be some kind of just some rough things that I would, or just kind of like some basic topics that I would talk about with journaling. The one more thing, writing this stuff down, I think could be a great one. Could be a great way of working with this placement as well. That can help you kind of see your thoughts outside and see how your thoughts maybe even be fueling your energy, or maybe even depleting your energy. So, but yeah, those would be just some kind of base things that I would talk about as with someone with this placement. You definitely need the whole chart to get a better picture of how this placement is working. But if you have this placement, or know someone who's working with this placement, you feel comfortable commenting about this, because I know 12th house things can be tough. It can be tough a lot of the times, but I think that it just makes those who have those placements that much tougher, and to be able to help other people as well. So share the tools maybe that you have, the different techniques, maybe the different whatever teachers that may have come along that have come along your way that help you move through these things as well. But You leave that in the comment section if you feel comfortable doing that. But also too, if you want to work more with this placement, really kind of get a better grasp of who you are, how to work with this natally, or maybe you want to, maybe you're in like a perfection year you want to see, maybe you're in like a Mercury year, and maybe there's could be a lot of mental energy that's going on for you. You want to kind of keep eyes on that. But if that's something that resonates with you and you want to check that out, down in the description box is my email if you have any kind of questions as far as like how to book a service with me or any things like that. But there's still steps. I'm revising some things right now, but that was what I have posted right now is still available for the time being. So if that's something that resonates with you, definitely check that out. And then last thing, there is on this channel too, I do these weekly videos that are just talking about the celestial news weekly, the chit chat that goes on up in the sky, and it talks about where the planets are at in the sun, and how to what placements are going to be most affected by them, and how to work with those energies. So if that's something that you want to look into, definitely check that out. But until next time, stay mindful out there. Keep raising that vibration through the roof. And I will catch you on the next one. Later.